Fascinating, Greg. Greg, I want to mention your next book, which is currently going to be released in the next couple of weeks.
That's right, that's right.
The State is Out of Date.
The state is out of date.
Which
We
is
can
awesome.
do it better.
I think we can do it better.
I
Greg.
think
That's
I
what-
can. It'd be hard to do it much worse than they are.
Wow. It's a fascinating read, Greg. You cover a multitude in it. I guess you've gone in a different direction, but again, there's elements of the chaos theory in there and
Yeah.
how that applies to human society, as we are, for all intents and purposes, a noisy bunch of people on this planet. We seem to do all sorts of crazy things, and but I think the last time we spoke, in all the madness of what goes on our planet, you'll see something like a city, and inside that city, people will want their own types of food, and they'll seek out and they'll organise, they self-organise how they get their own foods into certain districts, and there seems to be some order out of the chaos. And again, I can see why you're applying the bottom up self-organising principle. Is that the premise of the book? Is that where you were kind of going with it?
I had several inputs on that book, and from reading Lao Tzu when I was very young, probably when I was 15 or 16, I read Lao Tzu, who's very much into self-organization. As he says, the more rules and regulations you have, the more criminals and bad people you have in the land. Sure. And
but humanity's at an unusual time, Greg, in terms of consciousness, spirituality. Problems on the planet. I mean, we're in perpetual war as well all around. There we go down to war, but maybe we'll mention that in a little bit. But this is an incredibly. I'm the eternal optimist, though, Greg. I know it's not looking good.
Well, that's why you're smiling. That's a good way to be.
Yeah, but I mean, the time is right for this, and we are at an unusual point in our human journey. I think, like you just mentioned, though. People are either going to be an anarchist or they're going to be submissive. There's always going to be resistance to government control. I mean, what's going to be the outcome of the book? Do you want to educate people with a new philosophy? Do you want to change people's philosophy? Do you want to just broaden their horizons? Do you want to give some hope? Do you want to? What's the aim for the book in its package?
Well, around the world today, we've got people taking to the streets en masse. In all ages. It's not just a bunch of students out there protesting, it's old age pensioners and everything else. And we've seen in rapid succession governments collapsing. And people just put a new one in there. Let's have new faces and better policies. And in Egypt, they got a choice between two, which evil master do you want? This is democracy. Sure. And Churchill said democracy is the worst form of government there is, except all the other ones that came before it. It's just another way of deciding who is holding the stick and what you're being battered into doing. And even if the people holding the stick are saying, we've got to recycle and save the environment, it's not the way to do it. You get some other weird result, like biofuels. And dumping fish back into the ocean to save them when the EU gets involved in the legislation. Half the fish get thrown away. You get these crazy things. And I'm really trying to get across to people that we can do it better, and we're doing it all over the place. 90+% of all the stuff that really matters to us in life that we take for granted, we've done. Whether it's video cameras, canals, airplanes, shoes, spaghetti, it's all stuff that people created. The government hasn't created anything except, war, terrorism, nuclear power plants. They did come up with radar, which is helpful, and beet sugar. You take it or leave it. But everything else is people came up with, and the government comes in and they say, oh, we're going to just
make some rules.
This is so important, we've got to manage it and control it. And we end up, they get involved in the agriculture. And we have, in all North America and Europe, 90% of farmers lose money until they put the state subsidy in, government subsidy that comes out of our pockets. They get involved in, in Europe, I'm not worried about the French people coming across the channel and beating us all up and stabbing us and taking England. I'm not worried about the Mexicans doing that to the Americans or the Canadians. You know, we've broken down all these borders in our minds. The internet has no borders. We're all connected. We're all people. We realize that. And that's all the states are really there for. And they're taking is to protect us from other states. And they take so much of our money to do that and to regulate agriculture and food and medicine and all the things they're controlling. They're taking 50, 60, and some in Scandinavia, 70% of the wealth we create to do that. And if that wealth was still with us, was circulating in our economies, real money that we've created, not printed, borrowed money, I think there'd be so much less hunger, poverty, and homelessness, and so much more available for charity and human kindness, which is part of being human.
Sure. Our problems are solutions, like you say in the book.
Yeah.
You know, and that's something we don't really have a grasp on. It's a simple concept. It's a very simple concept.
Yeah.
Our problems are solutions.
And we tend to resolve problems. It might take a while,
Yeah.
but when we do, the problem's gone. Whereas the state tends to turn them into institutions, and they feed off of it. And you know, the whole departments of the state live on unemployment, and as do the police and the judiciary and the prison service. They thrive on crime. The more crime there is, the more they prosper.
Sure.
And you know, you don't want systems like that. You want systems that get rid of problems and everybody's happy.
When you explain this, Greg, you're almost, in an educated way, describing a system of insanity. In a way, it is. I mean, it doesn't work, and it's insane that people think it does work.
Yeah.
You know, it's a failure. It is a massive failure in our world.
And yeah.
Government always wasn't the way it is today. I mean, governments in ancient times were always different as well.
Well, they used to be smaller. That was a big difference. When you had a king, I'm not bigging up any of them.
Yeah.
But when you had a king, you had the king and his retainers and his favorites. But even with Napoleon, you know, the taxes weren't that high. That's what I'm getting at. Taxes would never go beyond 10% overall, and that was when a war was being fought. They'd need the money. They'd pay the soldiers. When the war was over, the soldiers would go back to being farmers and tailors and candlestick makers. Now the taxes have just gone up, and it's not. And they're taxes on everything. They're constantly taxing something new. Carbon tax now, the whole sort of how to save the world, we tax you more. That's what we have to do. And if they had all of our money, they're not going to have full employment, clean world, health, clean air, happy children and all of that.
When you look at it in terms of statistics like that, where a king would have had more manageability in a smaller democracy, in a sense. Today, 7 billion people on the planet and rising. God knows what it's going to be in 20 years. We're running into problems in that department. However, the numbers that's on the planet now, we're looking at global corporations running the system. I mean, what is the route out, Greg, with global corporations?
Well, global corporations and central states go hand in hand. They love each other. And the governments pass so much regulation that makes small enterprise really difficult. If you just want to open up a restaurant, if I wanted to invite all my neighbors around here or anybody to eat and charge them £10 a head, I'd go straight to jail. And I mean, I saw this in Morocco years ago. I mentioned it in the book. I saw a kid on a street corner with a packet of cigarettes. And he was selling cigarettes one at a time. So here a 15-year-old kid can go into business for himself for the price of a pack of cigarettes. He'd be breaking at least 4 or 5 serious regulations over here doing that. And you end up with a situation where the mass multinationals and corporations with central offices dealing with all the tax and the legislation, all of that, they tend to squeeze everything else out. And of course the government likes that because they don't want to have to collect tax from 500 different restaurants and all the sort of, or 5,000, and all the complication of that. They'd rather collect it from.
To talk today about two books, Son of God and The State is Out of Date. And if you'd like to just show the audience.
This is Son of God.
Get a copy of this book, everybody. It's awesome. It's an awesome read, and it's a life changer. And Graham Hancock's wrote a lovely foreword, if I'm correctly
That's
remember. It's very unique, Greg, the book. It's very, very unique. And you seem to have always do this thing repetitively where you see one thing that everybody else misses, or you bring something that nobody else wants to talk about or address, and you bring it to the forefront, and you address it in a very analytical, scientific, philosophical manner. So perhaps let's get into the Son of God, I guess. Tell us about the self-organizing principle of the Son and what that means.
Well, recognizing that the Son is a conscious entity, and when you look at the cosmology of it, it fits so much better than thinking this is a dumb dead ball of gas, behaving like this. And then looking at that, you see that the Sun itself is made up of a cosmic cloud of dust. So this dust cloud or hydrogen cloud somehow compressed into this sphere which has got 7 separate layers to it. Some of the ones in the inner, the visible part of the Sun, because 3 of the layers are invisible, go around each other at different speeds.
Wow.
And inside is a fusion. In the core of the Sun is the fusion reaction going on that's changing 5 million tons of matter to energy every second. About the size of a 1p piece was Hiroshima. Wow. So this is 5 million tons every second. And that's contained by another layer that's 25 times as thick as our Earth.
Wow.
The radiative zone that holds that energy in the core slowly seeps out. I could go on for the rest of this interview about how the Sun, the mechanics of it, but it's a complex object.
Complexity, yeah.
And that formed out of self-organized out of a cloud of hydrogen gas. So, and it was aided and abetted by electromagnetic fields. Now, the electromagnetic force is everywhere. It's inside the atoms of my fingernail or the table. It's everywhere in deep space. Everywhere you can see a pinprick of light, the electromagnetic force is there. And cosmologists recognized that, had a hand in bringing this cloud of dust into turning matter into a living device that is creating energy out of that matter. So the electromagnetic force is turning matter into a device that creates energy out of matter. It's kind of almost a reproductive thing going on there. But that shows you that consciousness is got to go beyond the Sun. It has to be really, this is a big leap to make without lots of links in between. Sure. But you get to the realization that consciousness pervades everything. It's omnipresent. Obviously there's a less consciousness in a paper clip than there is in a steel bar or whatever.
Sure.
And I don't, it's a strange thing to be talking about.